Hello, everyone. We often talk about this idea, the aggregation of marginal gains. In other words, can we win this game of life by just getting base hits, one base hit after another, and, they add up over time and they compound? That's a winning strategy. But what does it look like to hit the home run? What does it look like to tee up that aggressive stab at outperformance? And when should you consider that? What is the context of that? We invited Dominick Quartuccio back on the show today, and we're going to be exploring that exact concept. Welcome to the ultimate crowdsourced personal finance show. This is ChooseFI.
You're listening to ChooseFI Radio. The blueprint for financial independence lives here. If you're looking to unlock the secrets to financial independence and early retirement, you're in the right place. Stay tuned and join a community of like-minded people who are getting off the hamster wheel and taking control of their lives in the pursuit of financial independence. ChooseFI, your home for financial independence online.
All right, guys, very excited to dive into this week's content. And help me with this, I have my co-host Brad here with me today. How you doing, buddy?
Hey, Jonathan, I am doing quite well. Yeah, it's always a real treat to have Dom back on the show. So this should be a lot of fun, obviously. And yeah, it's funny, as you were describing that, right, we always talk aggregation of marginal gains, 1%, those little things. And my brain is so attuned to that I almost don't think in terms of bold steps, bold moves. Like, I haven't thought of the last time I've made a bold move because I am always looking for these little things that compound over years and decades, right? So it's going to be really interesting to dive into this concept of maybe what does it feel like? What does it look like to be bold? So Dom, with that, welcome back to ChooseFI.
Brad, thank you, sir. Good to see you again. I get to see you regularly. Jonathan, I haven't seen you in about a year, man. So it's great to always connect with you guys again. And thanks for having me on the show.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, I use the word outperformance, but I think you've been really talking about this idea of a bold move. So why don't you just set us up for just a framework for what we're exploring today?
Okay. So one of the things I love doing at year's end is to take a look at the next year ahead and get really intentional around designing your future. I wrote a book called Design Your Future. I know you guys have given it away to your audience members a number of times. And this year, the theme is, how do you make one bold move that supports an area of your life that's ready for the next level? Here's what I mean by that. You don't get to choose when your next level comes calling. There's an area of your life. Maybe it's in finances, maybe it's in relationships, maybe it's in intimacy, maybe it's in personal well-being, physical, mental health. There's a next level area of your life that is calling for you to step up. And it's usually somewhat of a scary call. Makes you throw up in your mouth a little bit when you think about it, right? And it's almost always inconvenient. It's almost always before you're ready, but you don't get to choose it. When the next level comes calling, it sounds the alarm. And I love what you guys do here around the 1% better every day. That is absolutely the strategy for lifelong growth. Chop wood, carry water, show up every day. That next level, though, sometimes requires something bigger than a 1%, right? It does require, Jonathan, I think you made a great analogy. Sometimes it's not just singles. You need to swing for the fences. And oftentimes it's because there's some level of comfort. I call this the comfort ceiling that you're bumping up against around. Maybe there's a habits, there's patterns, habits in your lives that you've gotten comfortable with, but this next level is requiring more. And so a bold move is in store. Here's what I mean by that. Let's make it really specific. About 12 years ago, I stumbled across this idea that, New Year's resolutions are terrible. They just don't work. We've seen it year every year. Why don't they work? We don't plan for them. There's a lack of accountability. And quite frankly, the New Year's resolution feels more like a burden than it does an adventure. And so I started just kind of stumbling around like 12 years ago. I was like, what if I signed up for my first personal development workshop? That's going to be my bold move for next year. And as long as I do that, then it's a success. So I did. I signed up for a personal development workshop and the rest is history. 6 or 7 years ago, I started to get even more bold with my moves. I'm going to write a book and publish a book, which is what I did in 2017. 2018, I want to get a TED Talk. I ended up getting a TED Talk. 2019, I wanted to be like you guys. I'm going to launch a podcast, launched a podcast. And what I started to find was that one bold move every single year, year after year, leads to a really fulfilling, adventurous life. And, we can start small with some of our bold moves, and we'll talk about that later on. But over the course of time, it becomes really exciting. It becomes exhilarating, and you want to level up each and every year. So today we're going to talk about what are the 3 steps of you making a bold move in your life. And like I said before the show, guys, one of the things that we're making available for the ChooseFI community is I ran a masterclass on this recently, and we're offering this up to you guys for free, your community for free. And I have a link that I'll share at the end that people can download that and a guided meditation that comes with it.
So this is what I'd like to do is to take what you just said and tack onto this, my perception of the aggregation of marginal gains, which is that 1% improvement, and just kind of combine these in some way or create the separation between the two. And my interpretation of what you just said is, and actually I think it's even adding a little bit onto what you just said, is the 1% better. It gives us more opportunities for these at-bats. By building these systems in place, we are increasing the numbers of opportunities that we have for luck to strike, but you still have to swing. You still have to, go for it. So I think we can win, in a very replicable way by just implementing these, 1% better tactics, but recognize the privilege that comes with that. As you build these systems in place, you almost build in the luxury of swinging for the fences. You have a backstop to support that. So I just want to say you don't have to pick one or the other. The aggregation of marginal gains naturally supports these bold move opportunities. And I'll give this back to you, Dominick, or to you, Brad, but I just wanted to also add on one more thing, because we are going into a new year here. And it almost sounds to me like you have abandoned kind of the New Year's resolution mentality, which comes with a lot of baggage, for a slight reframing here with this idea of bold move. Do you think that's accurate? Because, a lot of people would say, well, this sounds like a New Year's resolution.
Here's the difference between a New Year's resolution and the bold move that we're talking about. New Year's resolutions are a drag. They're oftentimes born in an obligation. They feel like a burden, something I should do, right? Most people, when they think about New Year's resolution, it's, I should get healthy. I should be doing this thing. I should. And it occurs as something that's weighty, that's heavy. The bold move has a different kind of energy to it. It's born from a spark. It's born from something that lights your soul on fire. And Brad, I know you like this analogy because I've talked about this on your show before. It's like that kid at Christmas or kid at birthday type of excitement. When you think about this thing on your future horizon, it gives you a little bit of jolt of energy. And so there's a difference between that and I really should go on a diet, that kind of thing. And you can definitely, and we'll go through some exercises here where you can start to feel the difference between the two. And the thing, Jonathan, that I just wanted to tie back to you is you're absolutely right. You do not have to choose between the bold move and the 1% gains. There's a beautiful marriage between the two. For example, when I chose to write my book and publish my book in 2017, the bold move was declaring that I'm going to write the book. But in the execution of writing the book, I had to put in 1% better every single day every day I showed up and I had to write. Every single day I had to show up and write better than I did the day before. And commit to it. So the process of writing that book did require the same showing up every day, 1% better, but the commitment to writing a big book, that required that bold step up.
Yeah, Dom, I love the quote that you said. It's more a burden than an adventure. That's what a lot of this stuff feels like, right? You think a diet, a budget, right? Which is really applicable to general personal finance, New Year's resolutions, like you're talking, as opposed to when you said that word adventure. Like it's funny because I'm so cued into my own energy now since knowing you for so many years, being part of the mastermind. Like I look for that little point of spark when I hear a word, and adventure just jumped out to me. I think a lot of people, when they find financial independence, it feels like an adventure. It doesn't feel like that deprivation of, oh, I've got to go on a budget. Oh, this is short term. It's, wow, this is something that can transform my life. And I think that's a cool rethink on that drag of the New Year's resolutions, right? Like, what would actually light you up this coming year? Like, have you ever even given yourself the space to think in that manner, right? Like to do something that's super exciting and bold.
Exactly. You're learning Japanese because it lights you up inside. There's no quote unquote practical reasons for you learning Japanese. There was something inside of you that stirred and said, I want to learn Japanese. And we were talking about on the show before we started recording is, what could my bold move look like if with respect to Japanese? It's like, what if you were to go to Japan for a week and start as many conversations with with people there to put what you've been learning into practice. That could be, not saying that that has to be, but that is one practical example of a bold move that you will remember for the rest of your life if you went and did that.
And that's a cool thing also, right? Is that you'll remember.
Yes.
Like, I want to really highlight that because like, I think about sometimes the last decade of my life, and my life is wonderful. Don't get me wrong. But like, could I differentiate 2013 from 2017 or 2009? I mean, probably not, because they're none of those like massive things. Again, I live a
hang on, real quick. I just want to interject there because I'd like to say I think you could.
Well, because 2017, I could.
No, yeah, exactly. But I just want to point that was a bold move. Like people in the financial independence community, many of them are pursuing financial independence, but that one more year syndrome hangs over your shoulder. You can walk away, but it's scary. Making the choice to say, I think I'm good. I think I'm done. I think I'm going to declare my financial independence and wield it, as a sword of power to design, the next chapter. That was a big move. And in fact, you chose the 2013 to 2017 example. By 2017, you had made that choice. You were definitely on the other side of a very bold move. So I know that you were saying that in a slightly self-deprecating way. I just wanted to come back and say, actually, I think there's a very line of demarcation there that you executed on.
No, well, thank you, Jonathan. That's a brilliant point. And Dom knows one of my my biggest areas of improvement is that I'm like very self-critical and self-deprecating is, maybe the more generous way of looking at it. But yeah, you're right. I mean, if I were more open to it, or if that was right at the top of my mind, I've made amazing steps in the last 5 years, or 5 or 6 years, leaving my job, starting ChooseFI. So clearly these bold things are there. Yeah, I wonder, Dom, if it's maybe just being more like attuned to it.
Yeah. Well, a big part of this is building in time for reflection. And this is going to be one of the steps in our process because we often overlook how much we've done, how much we've experienced, how much we've accomplished, because we are so speeding towards the future that we forget to take a look at the past. And I have an exercise in here. It's actually step 2 of our process today of how we look back to capture our standout moments. So we can start to realize, wow, like I do have more going on for me. I have accomplished more than I've given myself credit for. So we can move from the self-deprecation to the inspiration.
All right. So Dominick, as we kind of go into this next chapter, I think you've kind of set us up nicely. How do we build this bold move? And I think many of us are going to have concerns that ours isn't bold enough, or maybe it's too ridiculous and it's not something that should even be considered. I think finding the nuance there of what qualifies as a bold move. And then, how do we go about building that out?
Jonathan, thank you for that setup, because the bold move that you are honing in on, it has nothing to do with other people's perceptions of how bold it is. It's you calibrating what is a bold move for you. And so this is generated from the inside out, first and foremost. And, some of the people who went to the masterclass on how to design your bold move that I ran a couple of weeks ago, one person said, I want to write a children's book, right? Another person said, I want to close my first commercial real estate deal next year. Someone else said, I want to start a women's mastermind for women who are in professional services. Someone else said that I want to work on my mental health for next year. For each person, it's calibrated differently. And I imagine that some of your listeners are starting to get curious about, okay, what's my bold move? I don't really, maybe you already have it. Maybe you're like, I don't know where to begin. So we're going to go through a 3-step process on how you can start to identify what your bold move is.
All right. And just for our audience, as Dominick said, there is going to be a masterclass available for this. So you'll be able to go through this exercise yourself. He's made that very easy to access. You can find it at DominickQ.com/ChooseFI. And Dominick has, its own spelling. It's DominickQ.com/ChooseFI. All right, Dominick, go ahead.
Great. All right. So we're going to talk about 3 steps to finding your bold move. Here are the 3 steps, and we'll go through each one of them individually. The first one is you are going to identify the area of your life that's ready for the next level. The second step that we're going to go to is a reflection exercise. You're going to be looking back at the year 2021 for the standout moments of your year of 2021. I'm going to give you an exercise on how to do that. And this kind of gets to the conversation we were just having with you, Brad, about not racing too fast to the future without looking at everywhere you've been. And this is a really fun exercise. The people in our community loved it. And the third and final step to finding your bold move is generating 10 bold move ideas and then picking the one that creates the biggest spark, right? That feels like that adventure, Brad, that you talked about. So step number 1 is identifying the area of your life that is ready for the next level. So a few minutes ago, I shared that there's an area of your life that is already calling you to the next level. And what do I mean by calling you? Because that can sound esoteric. There's usually something that happens inside of each and every one of us that says, I'm ready for that next level at work. I'm ready for that promotion, or I'm ready for that next level of my FI adventure. I'm ready for that next level of relationship intimacy. I'm ready to get my physical well-being into place. Or you know what? Maybe I've just been so burdened with responsibilities. My next level is around doing me, just taking an adventure or self-care or acquiring some sort of skill that makes me feel alive again, playing like a child. What we want you to start to think about is, what is that next level of your life? And I have 5 questions here that you can start to think about that can start to instigate the reflection process. How do you know when the next level is calling? So number 1 is you start to feel a pull towards something more, right? There's something more that's being asked of you, mental health, relationships, whatever it is. You can feel that there's something that wants more of your attention. The second area that the next level is calling is what once lit your fire no longer interests you. And maybe I'll ask you guys if you can relate to this, but have you ever been super engaged in something like whether it was CrossFit or, for me, when I was in financial services, the only thing I ever wanted to do was become a salesperson. And when I got to, the level of a salesperson for a few years, it was like the only thing I wanted to do. And then one day I just woke up and I was like, I'm done with this. The thing that once interested me, it's kind of like I already satisfied its purpose. And I just kind of felt, the energy dissipate. Can you guys relate to that?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, for me, the one that jumps right off the top of my head is using travel rewards, actually, right? So like my first couple of websites were based around almost entirely travel rewards. And it was awesome. And I helped people and save, probably tens upon tens of millions of dollars. And like, that feels really good, right? But it just got to the point where it just wasn't lighting me up anymore. And I didn't know why.
Yeah.
It just simply didn't. And I think, that was maybe one of the reasons I was looking for something different when Jonathan came calling with, hey, I've got an idea for a podcast, right?
Beautiful example, Brad. That's a beautiful example because so many of us can experience that dissolution of energy as a failure. It's not a failure at all. It's okay, I've satisfied the purpose for which this was intended. The travel rewards did exactly what it needed to do for the period of time that you did it. And then it created this clearing for you to ask for something more. And my goodness, like look what came along, between you and Jonathan. And you guys are you've made a dent in this world over the last number of years running this podcast, and how many lives have been changed, how many families' lives have been changed through the work you've done here. So anyone who's at that stage in your life where it's like, this thing I once loved doesn't give me that fulfillment anymore, that is a success. That's a celebration because that next level for what do I want next is coming.
Right. And it's easy to beat yourself up, actually, like that you're not grateful enough, which is an interesting way of looking at it. Like, again, there might come a time, so at some point in the future, like just knowing energetics, right? Like that ChooseFI might not light me up anymore. I don't suspect that's going to happen, but like, how ungrateful would I feel, right? That like I have this amazing opportunity, but yet, again, this is hypothetical, but like
you say it's hypothetical, you're going to get like 12 emails next week.
I know.
Brad,
I should just keep with the travel rewards. It was easier. But, like, it's the same thing with travel rewards, right? You're helping people, and I just got tired of it, right?
Brad is going to come to the conclusion that he needs to take his bold move, a 6-month hiatus to Japan to practice Japanese.
Oh, that would be so awesome.
He'll come back to ChooseFI on the other side.
ChooseFI, so nobody worry.
Look how excited you just got, man. There may be some truth in it. Maybe it's not 6 months, but there's something there. Like that's the kind of spark you want to look at really closely.
Yeah.
I am now looking for a potential fill-in for Brad for the next 6 months. We do 1 episode a week. You must enjoy talking about personal finance. There it is. Send your emails to feedback@choosefi.com. We're going to make this possible for Brad.
Oh, goodness.
Sorry, I made your job so much harder there, Jonathan. But I'll quickly go through these other 3 things, like 3 signs that your next level is calling, and then see if you guys have any questions before we move to the next step. Step number 3 sign is you feel restless and unsatisfied with a part of your life. And this kind of goes to what you were just saying, Brad, is, man, I have so many reasons to be grateful for my job, my savings, my family, but I'm feeling restless and unsatisfied. Like there's something more. And that is a sign the next level is calling for you. Sign number 4 is you feel this burning desire to realize more of your potential. You guys ever get that nebulous feeling? It's kind of like an unclear, I know I'm capable of something more. Like I know I have more left in the tank than what I'm giving. I just can't quite figure out what that thing is. A lot of us can feel that. It's like, there's something more. There's something more. This is your opportunity to get curious about what that something more is. And the fifth sign that your next level is calling is you have recurring dreams about something that just won't seem to subside. And that recurring dream may not be rooted in practicality, like a 6-month trip to Japan, or like starting your side hustle, or of, maybe starting your own podcast or starting a women's mastermind. Like someone else, one of their bold moves was to write a screenplay. And sometimes these dreams have nothing to do with the life you set up for yourself right now. But here's what I can assure you. If you are willing to go on the adventure, like I did 12 years ago, taking a personal development workshop, I was super skeptical of doing something like that. Going into a room, I knew the people were going to be weird. I didn't trust the people who were teaching me. I thought it was just a factory for making money off of me and my insecurities. But then when I went in, it actually opened my eyes up to a whole other world of personal development. And I started to see over the course of time, I started to have these fantasies of leaving the corporate world. And every single year with a bold move that I made, it actually brought me one step closer. And in 2016, I left a 15-year career in financial services with a really good company. And I'm doing what I'm doing now. So those dreams you have that won't go away, they're calling on you for a reason. And it's time to start paying attention.
Yeah, Dom, that's so interesting. And that actually brings up a question that I had is kind of like the time horizon of this. I know we're talking about like a 1-year thing, but when you're sitting down, and I know we're going to talk about generating 10 ideas and such, like I assume people don't want to be limited by, oh, this is something I can do next year, right? Like when you're just kind of free form thinking of, hey, what are these bold things that I want? Like you said, changing your entire career, like that might not be possible for people in 2022, but do you want to think about this in terms of like an arc, or for this exercise, are we just looking at 2022?
Great. So this is a clear distinction here is the next level is that arc, like that big thing of say, for example, using your example of I want to leave my job, but it's not going to happen in 2022, right? I want to become an entrepreneur. I want to follow my life of passion and purpose, whatever that is. That may not happen for most people in next year. The bold move is one very specific thing that has a beginning, middle, and an end that you will accomplish in the year 2022. That is a step towards that next level. See what I'm saying? So it could be, hey, I can't leave my job next year, but I can begin that side hustle. Like maybe I do start the podcast. Maybe I do start the email newsletter. Maybe I do start a social media channel or a YouTube channel that like starts to position me as an expert. Or maybe I'll go get my real estate license, whatever it is. One very specific thing that you can say, I did that in this year. That's a step closer to your next level.
So the bold move is a step towards the next level, or could be a step towards the next level.
The bold move is in support of that next level. Right on.
Hey, this is Andrew from the ChooseFI team. Hope you're enjoying the interview. We're going to get right back to it right after these quick messages.
All right. So we were talking about this process that we're going to go through. So we're looking, how do we identify areas for improvements? And that's kind of what we were, brainstorming right now. The next step in this process was identifying the standout moments. I believe that's kind of the next thing that we need to build on.
Correct. So step number 2 is you're going to identify your standout moments from the year 2021. And we'll give you a really fun example that our community loves going through. So Maya Angelou said, how can you know where you're going if you don't know where you've been? And oftentimes we forget where we've been because we race past where we've been. And one of the exercises I implemented, 4 or 5 years ago that has been so fruitful is at the end of every year, I pick up my phone and I go back to January 1st in my photos. And in January 1st, I just start scrolling through every single photo, every single video that I've taken over the course of that year. And I start to take screenshots of my standout moments. Now, there are 2 types of standout moments. You have the macro moments and the micro moments, right? So the macro moments are these big moments that occurred over the past year. Some examples for me were, macro moments. January of last year, I started the year in Sequoia National Park. I'd almost forgotten about that, guys. That felt like a lifetime. January 1st of 2021 feels like a lifetime ago, right? And I remember seeing those trees and looking at those videos of myself just dwarfed by these trees that have been around longer than Jesus, like since 2100 years, right? on this planet. And it's just awe-inspiring. In March, my family sold their house that I grew up in, our house of 35 years, pictures standing in front of our house on the final day of the year. April, I went through a breakup in a relationship that was really meaningful to me. And it was a really, somber period, a sad period of time of the year for me. In, I think it was maybe May, Brad, we got together, our mastermind that had been together for 18 months virtually. We finally got together in person. And as I was scrolling through and looking at all of these, I took screenshots of every picture that really stood out as a macro moment. And then I put them into a PowerPoint presentation. Just here's what happened in January. Here's what happened in February. Here's what happened in March. This whole exercise, like the screenshotting, took me about 10 minutes. Putting them into the PowerPoint took maybe another 20 minutes. And when I put that together and I shared it with the masterclass, that 90-minute masterclass I ran, my heart started to swell with like, oh my goodness, I can't believe how many incredible moments have occurred. How many sad moments, how many extraordinary moments. Those were the macro moments. And then even some of the micro moments, like I borrowed my friend's toy poodle for the weekend and I took care of the dog for the weekend, and it made me realize I didn't want to buy a dog. I just rather borrow yours and give it back at the end of the weekend, right?
I really feel like I need to do some forensics on what this encounter actually looked like and the motivations behind it. I'm going to save it for another episode.
That's a totally
but I just wanted to let you know it was noted, filed away, and in any other context, we would divert to cover this.
Man,
but
baby toy
you may
poodle,
continue.
Baby toy poodles are very needy. They poop everywhere. So
I just don't know what would cause. Hey, can I borrow your dog? That's just not normally the conversation. Do you know what? We're going to move on. We'll move on.
Okay, we'll move on. Yeah, some of those micro moments that I had a chance to see and going through this exercise was like, oh, here's a book that I read, The Soul of Money, which is the greatest book I've ever read in terms of my emotional relationship with money. I had a chance to see some of the places that I traveled, some of the people who I hung out with, like those one nights that you spent with people that really mattered. And when I went through that whole exercise, it reminded me how rich and abundant a year can really be. That's the experience that I typically have every year that I do this experience. Some people have the opposite experience. It's like, wow, I really didn't do much this year. It felt like, maybe I was just kind of drifting, going for the ride. And even that is worth the exercise, because what we're looking for here is a spark that starts to catalyze. What are the elements of this past year that either like really lit me up, or what was missing that I do want more of in the year ahead? And for me, one of the biggest themes that I saw, one of the macro themes I saw, was almost every month there was something big happening with the men in the masterminds that I run. At The Great Man Within, I run 3 masterminds, and we had 2 new masterminds launched this year. We had in-person immersions for the first time because last year with COVID, we couldn't get together. And what that started to spark in me was this desire to take what we had built to a much bigger level. And that's kind of like a foreshadowing for like what I'm going to share with you around what my bold move is for the year ahead. But in seeing where we've been over this past year, it gave me very clear line of sight of, I know exactly what's lighting my fire for the bold move for the year ahead.
Yeah, Dom, I love the comment, how rich and abundant a year can be. It's easy to lose sight of that. I know I do pretty often, right? But like that moment of reflection, that can be really cool. Like, I guess for me, like I don't take a lot of pictures, right? So like I'm thinking of other ways that I could do that. I guess I could go through my calendar or some such. Maybe my wife might have taken some pictures so I could look at her Facebook account or some such. It's funny because I talk about a lot of these things like, oh, I wish I did X. I'm thinking about, it's funny, we talked about Japanese, right? Like I actually studied abroad in Japan years ago in college, actually when we knew each other at the University of Richmond, and I journaled. And I kept track of, just little day-to-day occurrences. And I'm able to look back on that. And it's just such a rich and magical thing to have. But of course, I stopped, like an idiot. And right? Like,
hey, stop self-deprecation.
Yeah, I know. But like to me, for somebody who has like not the world's greatest recall of his life, memory-wise, like I think something like journaling would be really cool, but I can't envision going forward from this conversation and actually like what it would take to do that. So anyway, that's probably a separate issue, but like I suspect some level of like journaling could be a pretty cool aspect of this as well.
It's a great idea. For people who don't take a lot of pictures, going back through your journal entries is a phenomenal way of doing it. If you read books, go back through your book list, and take a look at what you've read this year. Brad, for you specifically, go back through all of the episodes of the podcast that you've recorded this year. Look at all the guests. Go through all the weekly ChooseFI emails that you've sent out and look at the themes that you've been talking about. So these are specific to you, but I'm hoping that your listeners can start to also think of what are those things that I do, and go through your calendar, look at all the meetings that you've had and who you've had them with. If you've traveled, go through some of like your flight logs, remember where you've been. There's always ways for you to kind of do an inventory of where you've been, and you'll be surprised at how much happened.
Yeah, that's cool. It's certainly clearly on like the macro level, but you also mentioned like micro moments.
Yeah.
Talk me through that, because like that sparked something in me. I'm thinking about just like the little day-to-day joys, like playing board games with my family. Exactly. Or like my younger daughter Molly is now into Star Wars. I'm like a lifelong Star Wars fan, so we like sit and like cuddle. We have like a specific spot on the couch where we watch like our Star Wars. It's super cool. But like again, that lights me up. But I'm not sure like where that fits into like bold moves, other than it's cool to think about these micro things.
Yeah. So what you're looking at, and by the way, a great idea to do with your family is to sit down with them over dinner, maybe after dinner one night, and say, hey, let's talk about what some of your favorite moments of this year were. And maybe your kids, if they have phones, like maybe have pictures, or even if they don't, just to recall, like what were some of their favorite moments? Hey, Molly, what was your favorite moment that you spent with dad this year? What was your favorite moment that you spent with mom? What's your favorite moment that you spent as a family? What's your favorite moment at school? And even to get that conversation started, you'll start to see what lights them up. And that will be like a mirror to get you to start thinking about, look at these things that inspire me. And Brad, to tie it back to your original question, what we're looking for here is, what is the spark that provides you energy? Because the New Year's resolutions fail oftentimes because it's baked in burden. I should. And we're looking for spark. So when you go back and look at all the things that lit you up, that is a clue for the energy that you're going to want to look to replicate when you pick your bold move.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense.
All right, so we're going to be moving into this third part of this exercise, and we're going to be talking about, generating ideas. And I think kind of going back to the standout moments, maybe there's almost a bridge between like a filter that's in place between this aspect of reflection that we're talking about. And we're talking about really, one, cultivating the sense of gratitude for what's already happened, identifying, the macro and the micro moments. I'm a little bit curious, because when we started, we were identifying the difference between a bold move and then kind of this was typically thought of as something you should do, a New Year's resolution. But having said that, I think there's two kind of pits here. One is we're thinking it needs to be something external. And so like for the individual that just says, all right, well, I know I should go back on a diet. I really should. But at the same point, like, how can I turn that into my bold move? And then also maybe for the parent, like, in Brad's case, my happiest moments were moments where I was doing something with my kids, but that's almost a default that I fall into because I don't do things for myself, maybe out of guilt or maybe because I feel like I have to choose one or another. I think those are two pitfalls. It goes back to that and maybe that initial idea of guilt or lack of gratitude or just the inability to move from what I should do to what I want to do and maybe need to do. Maybe you can help before we go straight to idea generation, talk us through this filter.
I love this example, Jonathan. And so this thing of I should do, right? So maybe I really should address my physical well-being, right? Diet, nutrition, working out, because maybe there are consequences that are at stake, right? Maybe there's like some health things that like need to be addressed, but there's a heaviness, there's a weightiness to it. But what if you just went through that, that standout moments exercise and you started to see that the things that lit you up were being with your family or being, in community with other people and actually not doing something on your own. One of the things that we talk about in our community, the Great Man Within, is to stop lone wolfing your life, right? So many of the men who come to our community have been these rugged individualists. Everything I have to do on my own. If I'm going to go on a diet, I've got to go and like hire a trainer and do it by myself. If I want to build this business or if I want to launch this initiative, it's got to be on the back of myself. And so few guys and people in general, but like the men that are in our communities, very few of them think about the fact that they can leverage community support. And so if you went through the standout moments exercise and found that what lit you up was doing this with your family or with other people, then maybe that what switches the addressing my health from a burden to a spark is doing it in community with other people. Maybe all it would take is like enrolling 2 or 3 people that like you care about to go on this health journey with you. Or maybe it's about enrolling your family in a really creative way to go on a 60-day journey together with health, or I don't know, but like you'd have to create that for yourself. What you're looking for is there's going to be an internal shift once you get creative with this idea of, this sounds heavy, this sounds like a drag, to when you start to dress up the idea to, whoa, all of a sudden that feels like a burst of energy. Then you know you've tipped the scale from should to spark.
That's cool. Yeah, it's interesting as you were saying that. I was thinking one of my, I didn't use the terminology bold moves last year, but I think one thing that inspires me is like actually taking action, like taking an idea that I've seen somewhere and then recognizing the fact that I did that, you know?
Yes.
And really, that's the thing. Like, don't let go of that, recognize that, and then stack those actions together. And one thing that I did last year that I look back and I still am very proud of it, and it brought me a lot of joy, was I did that health fit challenge. I think it was healthy wage. I set a bet with myself that I would lose some particular amount, but like I really framed it as a public transformation, and I kind of put it out there. So as a public figure inside of our tiny little microcosm, I said, this is my goal. This is my now. This is what I'm going to do. And this is the form of accountability that I'm going to use. And I set a pretty decent bet. I think I ended up winning like $2,000, something like that. But even more than that, I knew I was publicly accountable to the people that were following me on this challenge for this period of time. And, I didn't want to fail. And regardless, I got the results and it was great. But I think I actually look back to that moment. I had a lot of fun actually doing that. It set me up for a lot of opportunities. It sparked a lot of good conversations. And I was outside of a drift state. I had to force myself to be there, and I was able to take it from, kind of this drag that's happening in a lone wolf vacuum to this event that I could share with, additional people. So I think there is some aspect of that. I've definitely done many quote unquote diets and lone wolfed it, before, but that was one opportunity where it was a transformation, and it was very action based, and there was a lot of accountability baked in it. It did turn it into an event. It felt very bold. It feels very bold to me now. It's like, oh, maybe do you go back and do an event that if it was a bold move before, do you go back and do something again? Are you allowed to repeat bold moves?
Yes. And look what, like you said, you've done many weight challenges, diet challenges in the past, but what made it different for you last year was you did the public accountability. That one tweak you made created a spark, a new kind of energy that you said provided the fun and also accountability you needed to see it through. So what I might encourage you to do is, if you were to think about, I'll ask you this right now. If you were to replicate it in exactly the same way that you did it last year, would it feel kind of like I could do that? Or would it actually feel like maybe I could do that if I were to come up with one more creative idea to dress it up a little bit that could reinvigorate my passion for something like that? What would that feel like for you?
Yeah, I think for me, I would tackle it a slightly different way. I would take all the, you learn a lot of lessons when you go through, a 90-day or 120-day really intense challenge in your life. Like there's lessons learned by best practices, et cetera, and you add new tools to your toolbox. And so I would probably take some of those lessons learned and just bring it with me. So it's a new approach to it, or it's a new version of, the same methodology. So I don't know if I would do I'm sorry, I'm stealing the conversation here. I don't know if I would do exactly what I was doing before, because the production behind what I was recording videos and producing videos on a weekly basis, and I created a full-time job for myself. But maybe there's I could build on that principle, which is public accountability, and share results, and maybe an albeit a less production intensive capacity.
I think I can actually answer your questions, Jonathan, even more precisely by giving you what I'm going to be doing for my bold move for the year ahead, because it's something I've done a number of times before, but never in this way. So, this third step that we're talking about of identifying your bold move requires you to write down 10 bold move ideas, right? To generate 10 bold move ideas, possibilities, and picking the one that gives you the spark. So the way that we get there is, step number one is first of all, just writing down what is your next level. Okay. Now, my next level, and I'm going to give you my specific example so you can kind of see how this breaks down. My next level, when I looked back at 2021, the biggest theme was men's work and these masterminds, and seeing the 60 men who are in these various masterminds. By the way, I think about a third of these men came from the ChooseFI community. So we love our FI guys. Wow. They're phenomenal. And thank you guys. These 60 men's lives are changing. They're upgrading. And so my next level is taking this work global, going way bigger, getting more men involved, right? So I said, okay, well, that's my next level. What's step number 2 is writing down 10 bold move ideas that I could use to support this next global move. So I wrote down ideas. Maybe I get another TED Talk. Maybe I put a lot of advertising dollars behind the podcast. Maybe I go and get, like really recognizable names that we can interview on the podcast. Maybe I write another book, or maybe I launch a global challenge for men that men want to be a part of. And I had, these 10 ideas, and then I looked for the one that lit me up the most. And the one that lit me up the most was launching a global challenge for men. And so, the final step was circling that and then bringing that and then choosing that as my bold move and then bringing that into fruition. So this global challenge that I'm putting on for men is the 100 Great Push-Up Challenge. Brad already knows about this.
Yeah.
And it's challenging men who want to learn how to do 100 push-ups in a row, right? Like 100 push-ups in a row without stopping. And it's a 60-day program, free challenge, where guys get to test their physical, mental, and emotional capabilities, shatter any perceived limits. And I've done this, Jonathan. I've done this push-up challenge for myself personally for 6 years. I did it by myself, just to prove for myself that like I could take on a Herculean task and do something that I thought was impossible and find out that I could do it. And then I started running it inside the masterminds. And the mastermind started succeeding at it. And we started seeing guys who had never done more than 10 push-ups in a row get up to 50 push-ups. Guys who had never done more than 50 push-ups in a row get to 100 and 105. And just watching how thrilled and excited they were and how they were like, if I can do this in push-ups, I could do this in my income. I could do this in my relationships, right? Like I don't need limits anymore. So I started realizing that this was a thing that could go to a massive level. And instead of wanting to run this all by myself, Jonathan, this is where kind of taking the challenge to this next level, I decided to partner with like 3 people who know how to launch big challenges. And one guy, he's raised $7 million for charity over the last like 6 or 7 years. He came on the board. Another guy who runs a charity that's like the largest mental health charity for teenagers and young adults in Australia. He came on board. And we launched this challenge 2 days ago. Brad knows about it because he shouted out in the ChooseFI newsletter. We got 200 registrants in the last 48 hours. And all of a sudden, this thing, Jonathan, that I've done for 6 years is taking on a brand new way of being, because it's not just about me anymore. It's about like enrolling other people and watching them have breakthroughs. And it's also about, instead of me running the whole thing, I've got a whole team of people who are helping to run it. So something that really kind of lost its panache, but like, it wasn't as exciting doing the push-ups again every year, but bringing it to this level right now is the single most exciting thing. And I'm lit up about it.
Yeah. And it's like you said before, when you feel a burning desire to realize more of your potential, what are the steps you have to take? And in your case, sure, you could have kept doing this every year. I took part in it a year or 2 ago. It's fantastic.
Did you do 100 push-ups, Brad?
No, well, I kind of got hurt. So it's been, unfortunately. Yeah. But
disclaimer, may come with risk.
No. It was my own stupidity. But the funny thing, it's really, I don't know what percentage Dom would say, but for me, it's like maybe 25% physical, 75% mental. And like, that's the cool part of how you do this, is you make it kind of like this intro to inner work, which is neat for something that like ostensibly or on the face of it is like, it's just push-ups, right? Like it's so much more than that. So that's cool. But you could have just kept doing it and lone wolfing it yourself, right, Don?
Yes.
And like you said, okay, to realize more of the potential of maybe this transformation that I know this has on people's lives, like I've got to bring other people in. And like, that's been a cool thing for me to watch from afar, is like you kind of shifting in that, and like how exciting it is to get other people's ideas involved in something. And like, it's taken on a life of its own. So it's been cool for me to see that from afar, watching you have that subtle shift in energy on how you're approaching something like this.
Yeah, thanks, Brad. And I think a lot of your listeners could probably relate to this idea of maybe your next level is asking for support. Truly. Like, so many people are going at their lives alone. And the reason why I talk so much about stopping lone wolfing your life, and we're actually trademarking that, stop lone wolfing your life is ours. And we're in the process of trademarking it, is because I was the consummate lone wolf. And so every next level, what's being asked of me is to not do it on my own. And I know so many people out there are relating that. That's why, I think 20 of your guys joined our masterminds, is because they were like, I'm tired of lone wolfing my life. I know I'm better with other guys who are helping call me forward to a higher level. So this push-up challenge, it's not a typical challenge like a P90X or a 75 hard where you're doing it on your own. You're put in a small accountability group, right? Where you can be surrounded by other guys who are calling you forward. I had to build it with other people to get the reach we needed to. The Dominick of a year ago, Brad, would have been afraid to ask you to shout this out in ChooseFI because I wouldn't want to put that burden on you. But like this year, we did. And you shouted out, and we probably got 100 men sign up for it just yesterday alone because of what you did. So thank you. And many more on their way. So the bottom line here is, for anyone who's looking at like, what would be that one bold move I could make? Like, it's the one thing that I will make certain that I get done next year because it's an adventure, because it holds so much weight in helping me reach my next level. And that if I were to do it, and if I were to do it again the next year and the year after that, what's the impact on my life? I can tell you after the 12 years of doing this, it took me from just doing a personal development workshop to I'm a man living my life's purpose today. Like and I was lost 12 years ago. Doesn't need to take that long either, but I was lost 12 years ago. I'm a man who feels deeply connected and surrounded by people that I love, doing work that I love. This holds the potential to do something big for each of your listeners too.
Well, you've given me a lot to think about, and I would say that your episodes really have paired nicely together. So for people that are listening to this that are thinking, I'd like to build on these concepts, what else has Dominick talked about on your show? I'll just give our audience a few other episodes to check out. Dominick was on our show back in episode 33. So you can, with all of these, you can find them, ChooseFI.com/033. And that one talking about this concept of designing your future. He joined us back on the show, an episode that really resonated with me, ChooseFI.com/096 by the title of Drift. We talk about this drift state, and I'll come back to that in just a second. And then he's actually joined us 2 other times, but I'll mention one of them notably. Designing Your Year for 2021 was episode 270, and there's at least one other instance that I know he's been on our show as well. So these episodes would probably all be worth your time. I think they build together. For me, bold moves build on the fact that you've identified drift in your life. That's just a big statement for me. And I think one of my just kind of things that sat with me ever since, really meeting Dom and then kind of going through a lot of these conversations has been how much of my life is just happening on autopilot, and not because I'm excited about it, but because I'm not thinking about it and don't realize that that's happening. I'm making suboptimal choices because making more optimized choices would require intention. And I think I do make a decent percentage of intentional choices now. And the best things that have happened in my life have happened because of those intentional choices. Some of them would qualify as bold moves. Some of them would qualify as aggregation of marginal gains and a system being put in place. But the impetus was intention. And so just for our audience, I really think it's worthwhile to just, a lot of your life is going to happen just on autopilot. It's just the nature of it. Dom, I know that in the past you said that some ridiculously high percentage of our day-to-day actions are handled just on autopilot. But if we can improve by 1%, wow, what does that open up? And so that's what we're talking about here. And I know for me, I try to identify when drift is driving me to a bad place. When that drift state is charting a course that I'm not happy with, what do I have control over? And any bold moves that I have, any New Year's resolutions that I set up, have that framework in mind. It's about reclaiming some aspect of control. And whether you're talking about doing it for a 90-day challenge, or whether you're talking about charting a new course for your life, that's the thing. It's minimizing drift that leads you to a bad place. And so, Dominick, again, just for our audience that are listening to this, that are getting value, where can they go to access the masterclass? And I would imagine also the challenge as well.
Exactly. Yeah. As you mentioned before, Jonathan, the site that we set up for ChooseFI listeners is DominickQ.com/ChooseFI. And this is only for ChooseFI listeners because the masterclass was something that we offered. We charged $25 for it. It's a 90-minute masterclass that comes with a guided meditation to help you to generate ideas for your bold move. And it also comes with a 2-page PDF worksheet. And we're providing this for free at DominickQ.com/ChooseFI. So there's a link there to grab that. And on that same page is the link to register for the push-up challenge. So DominickQ.com/ChooseFI for the push-up challenge and for the free masterclass.
All right, to our audience, I hope you abandon the New Year's resolution. Instead, brainstorm. What is your bold move going to be? Like, let's just go on the offense here, right? Not offensive, but go on the offense. stop playing defense, stop thinking about what you should do, and let's start figuring out what do we want to do? What do we want to build? What do we want to move towards this year? Dominick, thanks so much for joining us on the show today.
Thanks, fellas.
All right, my friends, the fire is spreading. We'll see you next time as we continue to go down the road less traveled.